The Battle of Bannockburn took place on June 23 to 24, 1314, during the First War of Scottish Independence. It pitted the forces of Robert the Bruce, King of Scots, against the army of King Edward II of England. This battle marked a crucial turning point in the war and played a significant role in securing Scottish independence. Robert the Bruce demanded allegiance from those who supported the ousted Scottish king, John Balliol. He wanted them to recognize him as the rightful king or face the loss of their lands. In response to this demand, King Edward II of England invaded Scotland in 1314. The English were determined to relieve the siege of Stirling Castle, which was held by the Scottish army. To accomplish this, King Edward gathered an imposing army, one of the largest ever seen in Scotland. This force consisted of 25,000 infantry soldiers and 2,000 horses from England, Ireland, and Wales. In contrast, Bruce's Scottish army numbered around 6,000 soldiers, divided into three separate groups. Bruce strategically blocked Edward's attempt to reach Stirling Castle. The Scottish forces were organised into 4 divisions, each forming a defensive formation known as a schiltron. These divisions were led by Bruce, his brother Edward Bruce, his nephew Thomas Randolph, the Earl of Moray, and Sir James Douglas, along with the young Walter the Steward. A key addition to the Scottish side was Angus Og MacDonald, Lord of the Isles, who brought a substantial force of Islesmen, including Gallowglass warriors, to join the battle. Bruce placed them prominently alongside his own forces, including men from Carrick and Argyll, in the schiltron. During the Battle of Bannockburn, after Robert Bruce's encounter with Sir Henry de Bohun resulted in de Bohun's death, the English forces withdrew for the remainder of the day. In a pivotal turn, Sir Alexander Seton, a Scottish noble in King Edward's army, switched sides that night and shared critical information with King Robert. Seton's report revealed the English camp's low morale and suggested that victory was within reach for the Scots. Building upon this intelligence, Robert Bruce made a bold decision to launch a full-scale assault on the English forces the following day. He employed a unique strategy, turning his schiltron formations into offensive units. This marked a departure from the tactics of his predecessor, William Wallace. Bruce's innovative approach caught the English off guard and led to a pitched battle. The battle's outcome was a decisive victory for the Scots. The English suffered significant losses, including prominent commanders such as the Earl of Gloucester and Sir Robert Clifford. Many others, including the Earl of Hereford, were captured. This victory at Bannockburn became a cherished moment in Scottish history, celebrated for centuries through poetry and art. The memory of the battle endures, and the National Trust for Scotland operates the Bannockburn Visitor Centre, previously known as the Bannockburn Heritage Centre. Though the exact battleground location remains uncertain, a modern monument has been erected in a field that is considered a potential site of the battlefield. This area is believed to be where the opposing armies camped. Additionally, a statue of Robert Bruce, designed by Pilkington Jackson, stands nearby. The monument and the accompanying visitor centre have become popular attractions, drawing tourists eager to learn about and commemorate the historic Battle of Bannockburn. Edward I of England had aspirations of expanding his realm to prevent other foreign powers, notably France, from gaining control over territories in the British Isles. To secure Scotland's allegiance, he launched a campaign to conquer the country, sparking the Wars of Scottish Independence in 1296. Initially, the English enjoyed success under Edward I's leadership. They achieved victories at the Battle of Dunbar, 1296, and the capture of Berwick, 1296. Additionally, the removal of John Balliol from the Scottish throne further bolstered English dominance. Yet, the Scots managed to turn the tide by defeating the English at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in 1297. Edward I responded with a victory at the Battle of Falkirk in 1298. By 1304, England had seemingly subdued Scotland. However, Robert the Bruce's ascent to the Scottish throne in 1306 reignited the conflict. Following the death of Edward I in 1307, his son, Edward II, took over the English throne but lacked his father's resolute leadership, making England's position in the conflict more challenging. In 1313, Bruce issued a demand for the allegiance of the remaining Balliol supporters and called for the surrender of the English-held Stirling Castle, a strategically vital fortress controlling access to the Scottish Highlands. Edward II recognized the gravity of the situation and assembled a substantial campaign, requesting 2,000 heavily armoured cavalry and 25,000 infantry from England, Wales, and Ireland. Although only a portion of the infantry actually arrived, the English still formed the largest invading force Scotland had ever faced. The Scottish army, commanded by Robert Bruce, numbered around 6,000 soldiers, including about 500 mounted troops. Their cavalry was better suited for skirmishing and reconnaissance rather than full-on charges. The infantry, armed with axes, swords, and pikes, was accompanied by a limited number of bowmen. The exact numerical disparity between the English and Scottish forces remains uncertain, but contemporary estimates suggest that the Scottish were outnumbered by 1.5 to 3 times their size. Despite facing overwhelming odds, the Scottish were determined to defend their land and sovereignty. On the morning of June 23, 1314, the potential for a decisive battle between the Scottish and English forces was in the balance. The armies were still separated by 8 miles, affording King Robert the Bruce crucial time to decide on his strategy. He had 2 primary options: move northward beyond the Forth or westward along the river into a region of marshes and hills. Robert Bruce was well aware that his decision could influence the plans of Edward II and his English lords. Considering the English forces' earlier advance and their declared objective, it was clear that they were intent on pressing forward to Stirling. In their haste to rescue Stirling Castle, Edward II's troops had marched an astonishing 70 miles in a single week. This decision drew criticism from historians, as Edward II's actions appeared more akin to those of a pilgrim rather than a leader of a well-trained army. As a result, both the horses and soldiers became heavily fatigued due to exhaustion and hunger. Edward II's forces were now within striking distance of Stirling. With the impending battle, Edward and his advisors formulated plans. While Edward lacked strategic expertise, his advisors compensated for this deficiency. They identified potential locations where the Scots were likely to challenge them and ordered their troops to prepare for a confrontation in boggy terrain near the River Forth, close to Stirling. The English forces advanced in 4 divisions, each under the guidance of Edward's advisors. In response, the Scots organized themselves into defensive formations called skiltrons, compact squares of soldiers equipped with pikes. Thomas Randolph, the 1st Earl of Moray, led the Scottish vanguard, stationed approximately a mile south of Stirling near the street Ninian's Church. Robert Bruce commanded the rearguard at the entrance to the new park. His brother Edward was in charge of the 3rd Division, while the 4th Division was nominally under the youthful Walter the Steward but actually commanded by Sir James Douglas. Scottish archers, equipped with yew-stave longbows, were present, but they were outnumbered by their English counterparts. While these archers had bows of equal strength to the English longbows, their numbers were fewer, likely around 500. Interestingly, the archers played a limited role in the battle itself. There's evidence from a poem penned by the captured Carmelite friar Robert Baston that both sides employed slingers and crossbowmen. The stage was set for a momentous confrontation between the Scottish and English forces at the Battle of Bannockburn. Determining the exact location of the Battle of Bannockburn has been a subject of debate for years. While the traditional site, marked by a visitor centre and statue, is widely recognized, most modern historians contend that it is not the accurate location. Among various alternative locations, 2 have gained credibility among researchers. First, Dryfield, this area of peaty ground outside the village of Balchidere, located about 1 mile east of the traditional site. Next, Carse of Balchidere, situated around 1.5 miles northeast of the traditional site. This location is considered the most likely by the National Trust. The Battle of Bannockburn held great significance beyond just a military clash. It was a pivotal moment orchestrated by Robert the Bruce to solidify his kingship through combat. His efforts in this battle aimed to establish his authority on the throne of Scotland and compel recognition from Edward II as the rightful king. This struggle was not just against external forces but also internal challenges. The contest for the Scottish crown involved various contenders, including the Balliols, Bruces, and the Scottish political nation, spanning decades of power struggles. The importance of the Battle of Bannockburn extended beyond its immediate outcome and military aspects. The victory at Bannockburn influenced the trajectory of medieval warfare, as pointed out by W. M. Mackenzie. The battle demonstrated the superiority of infantry, properly managed and deployed, over mounted knights who had previously dominated warfare. This change in the art of war initiated a shift across Europe, where the role of foot soldiers gained prominence over cavalry. The significance of Scottish spearmen on the broader European stage was profound, as nations adapted to this new style of infantry-dominated medieval battles. Moreover, this battle's context included the rights to Stirling Castle. Robert the Bruce recognized the strategic importance of this castle, as it served as a key staging point. He was determined not to relinquish control of the castle to the English, which is highlighted by Herbert Maxwell's observation that Bruce positioned his forces strategically to block King Edward's access to Stirling Castle. In essence, the Battle of Bannockburn wasn't solely a clash of arms, it was a pivotal moment that intertwined military strategy with the quest for legitimacy, internal power dynamics, and the changing tides of medieval warfare. The Battle of Bannockburn stands out as an atypical medieval battle, spanning 2 days instead of the usual few hours. On the initial day, King Robert the Bruce strategically selected a flat field near a wooded area known as New Park for his camp. This location gave the Scottish forces, primarily foot soldiers, an advantage against the English cavalry, who were skilled in mounted combat. Bruce divided his army into 4 divisions and organized them into a diamond formation. He positioned himself at the rear to the south, while Sir James Douglas guarded the east. Thomas Randolph faced north, towards Stirling, and a reserve of 500 horsemen led by Keith waited in the west. Their formation aimed to maximize the natural terrain advantages. On June 23, 1314, the English launched 2 cavalry formations. The first, under the command of the Earl of Gloucester and the Earl of Hereford, led a larger detachment followed by about 300 soldiers led by Sir Robert Clifford and Sir Henry de Beaumont, who marched closer to the River Forth. These detachments aimed to relieve the siege on Stirling. However, little did the English know that King Robert the Bruce had ventured ahead, armed for reconnaissance rather than combat. He was riding a small horse with light armor and an axe for self-defense. Henry de Bohun, the nephew of the Earl of Hereford, spotted Bruce and charged at him in full combat gear. Bruce's quick reflexes and courage prevailed as he split de Bohun's head with his axe during their face-off. Subsequently, the Scots surged forward against the English forces under Gloucester's and Hereford's command. Overwhelmed, the English retreated across the Bannockburn. This incident is crucial in showcasing Sir Robert the Bruce's leadership style. As mentioned in an article by Sidney Dean, Bruce's willingness to lead from the front and display physical courage earned him the respect of his soldiers. This example of his valor became a testament to his leadership qualities. The Second English Cavalry Force, led by Robert Clifford and Henry de Beaumont, encountered a different fate. Thomas Randolph, the Earl of Moray and King Robert's nephew, was in charge of the Scottish advanced guard. Hearing of his uncle's success against the other English detachment, he was inspired to contribute. He led his division out of the woods and engaged with the English lords. Amid the clash, Sir Henry de Beaumont called for restraint, but Thomas Grey responded skeptically, fearing that giving the Scots time would not be effective. The engagement soon escalated, with Grey charging into the enemy ranks. Ultimately, the Scots routed the English forces, capturing some and forcing others to flee to Stirling Castle or the main English army camp. This first day of the battle underscored Bruce's strategic positioning, his personal courage, and the effectiveness of the Scottish tactics. It demonstrated his dedication to leading his troops and cementing his place as a respected and revered figure in Scottish history. As the night turned to dawn on the second day of the Battle of Bannockburn, the English forces crossed the stream called Bannockburn, situating themselves on the open plain beyond it. Alexander Seton, a Scottish knight fighting for Edward II, defected and informed King Robert the Bruce that English morale was dwindling. Seton's revelation encouraged Bruce to seize the advantage and launch an attack. In the morning, the Scottish forces advanced from their position at New Park. As they emerged from the woods, Edward II was taken aback to witness the Scottish pikemen approaching. Bruce's army paused and knelt in prayer, prompting Edward to comment in surprise that they were praying for mercy. A retort from one of Edward's attendants clarified that the Scots were indeed praying, but for divine assistance in conquering their foes or meeting their demise. Amidst the English ranks, the Earl of Gloucester and the Earl of Hereford had a dispute over who should lead the vanguard into battle. Additionally, Gloucester had argued for postponing the battle, leading the king to accuse him of cowardice. Fueled by this accusation, Gloucester decided to advance toward the Scots alone. This rash decision proved costly as he quickly found himself surrounded and slain by the Scottish forces. The tide of the battle turned decisively in favour of the Scots as they gradually pushed back the English. The schiltrons, or defensive squares of Scottish pikemen, played a crucial role in wearing down the English forces. The English longbowmen, intended to support the knights' advance, were ordered to cease shooting due to causing friendly casualties. An attempt by the English longbowmen to flank the advancing Scots was thwarted by 500 Scottish cavalry led by Sir Robert Keith. The English cavalry, restricted by the Bannockburn's geography, struggled to manoeuvre effectively and soon broke rank. Aymer de Valence and Giles d'Argenton, recognizing the dire situation, understood that Edward II needed to be led to safety at all costs. They took hold of the king's horse and hurriedly led him away, followed closely by the royal bodyguard. As they escaped the battlefield, d'Argenton turned back toward the fighting and declared to the king that he would not flee from the battle. He charged back into the ranks of the Scottish forces but was ultimately overwhelmed and slain. This marked a pivotal moment, signifying the Scottish triumph and the impending English defeat in the battle. In the wake of the Scottish victory at the Battle of Bannockburn, panic spread through the English ranks, turning their defeat into a chaotic retreat. King Edward II, accompanied by around 500 men from his personal bodyguard, fled in haste. His initial destination was Stirling Castle, where he sought refuge. However, Sir Philip de Mowbray, the castle's commander, turned him away, as the castle was on the verge of surrendering to the Scots. Pursued by a small group of Scottish horsemen led by James Douglas, Edward's escape route led him to Dunbar Castle. From there, he boarded a ship to Berwick. The rest of the English army, faced with the carnage of the battle, attempted to flee to the safety of the English border located 90 miles, 140 kilometers, to the south. However, many were hunted down and killed by the pursuing Scottish forces or by local residents along their route. Historian Peter Rees notes that only a sizable contingent of foot soldiers managed to successfully escape to England. This group was led by Sir Maurice de Berkeley and consisted of Welsh spearmen who remained cohesive amidst the chaos. Most of them eventually reached Carlisle. It's estimated that of the approximately 16,000 English infantrymen, only around a third survived, resulting in roughly 11,000 casualties. The English chronicler Thomas Walsingham reported that 700 English men at arms were killed, while another 500 were captured for ransom. In contrast, the Scottish losses were comparatively light, with only 2 knights among those killed. Following the battle, King Robert the Bruce gained control of Stirling Castle, an important stronghold, by means of surrender. However, he chose to dismantle the castle to prevent it from being recaptured. The surrender of Bothwell Castle, where English nobles including the Earl of Hereford had sought refuge, also held significance. Subsequently, Edwardian strongholds like Dunbar and Jedburgh fell to Scottish forces. By 1315, only Berwick remained outside of Robert's control. The battle's outcome facilitated Scottish raids into the north of England and enabled a Scottish invasion of Ireland. These events, combined with diplomatic efforts, culminated in the Treaty of Edinburgh-Northampton in 1328. This treaty secured full recognition of Scotland's independence by the English crown. It acknowledged Robert the Bruce and his successors as the rightful rulers of Scotland, cementing the Battle of Bannockburn as a pivotal moment that ultimately shaped the course of history. The legacy of the Battle of Bannockburn is commemorated through various means, with the Bannockburn Visitor Centre playing a central role in preserving and sharing its historical significance. In 1932, the Bannockburn Preservation Committee, led by Edward Bruce, the 10th Earl of Elgin and Kincardine, donated lands to the National Trust for Scotland. Additional land acquisitions in 1960 and 1965 were made to enhance visitor access to the battle site. A contemporary monument was erected in a field believed to be the site of the battle's eve encampments. This monument comprises two semicircular walls representing the opposing forces, and nearby stands a statue of Robert the Bruce created by Pilkington Jackson in the 1960s. Notably, although Pilkington Jackson conceived the statue, its actual creation was entrusted to Thomas Taylor Bowie of the Ontario College of Art in Toronto. The battlefield site, protected by Historic Scotland under the Historic Environment Amendment Act 2011, has been included in the Inventory of Historic Battlefields in Scotland. The Bannockburn Visitor Centre, formerly known as the Bannockburn Heritage Centre, is managed by the National Trust for Scotland. This centre, open from March to October, provides visitors with insights into the battle's history and its broader impact. In 2012, the original Visitor Centre building was closed and subsequently demolished to make way for a new structure designed by Rieck and Hall architects. The new Visitor Centre, which drew inspiration from traditional Scottish architecture, was developed through a collaboration between the National Trust for Scotland, Historic Environment Scotland, and funding from the Scottish Government and the Heritage Lottery Fund. It officially opened in March 2014, as part of a £9 million redevelopment initiative for the centre and the adjacent Battlefield Memorial. An innovative computerized multiplayer game was created to engage visitors in an interactive way. A notable event in recent years occurred on June 11, 2020, during the George Floyd protests in the United Kingdom, when the statue of Robert the Bruce at the site was vandalized with graffiti.